Okay, first things first, we got to mask this baby off. We're going to get in pretty tight there because we don't want to hit any of the surrounding edges if we can avoid it. And ultimately, we'll take it down to the level of the mask itself and then just barely past. So we're kind of breaking through the tape. So that's when we know we're pretty darn close. And obviously the masking tape will protect all the surrounding areas. I'm going to use a fairly fine Gros Bay file. These are Swiss files, and this one's very old. But before I do that, I'm going to do a little thing we call file card, which is basically using this ratty board with a bunch of metal prongs sticking out that we can get in there and scrub out these areas of the file that get clogged. So I'll give it a quick cleaning. I'm going to start with just a kind of a general shape. Feeling pretty good. You see that little white spot right there that may be trouble down the road, usually because of an air bubble that got caught up inside the acrylic, which is basically a thin super glue. It will maybe show up along the way. If that's the case, then we'll put just a little dot of touch up on that spot at the end of the game here. But for now, we're just going to kind of ignore it and hope it goes away along the way. Okay, you see we're starting to burn through some tape here. So I'll just put a little patch on there. To me, that's enough. So now I'll start with 1,000 grit sandpaper, and then 12, 15, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, 5,000 grit paper. So what I'm doing here is graduating. I've pre-cut these little squares of sandpaper, they're finishing paper, and try to keep it relatively neat and clean. I do keep them in my paper in plastic bags in between use, so that really helps to preserve it. So I'm going to start with the coarsest grit, 1,000. Put a little bit of water on here, help to cut a little bit more quickly and a little more evenly. And we're going to go in the direction of the grain of the wood, sanding in the natural shape of the neck. So let's say that's enough for the 1,000. Let's go to 12. I like Duragold paper. I get it on Amazon. Okay, and we have an outline too, which will probably disappear as we move along here, especially in the final buffing stages. On to 15, it's starting to blend a little better now. Let's go to 2,500 and see what happens. So at this point now, I'm going to pull my masking tape away. The fine scratches of 3,000 and 5,000 grit are just going to start to feather things into the rest of the back of the neck. And after I get through with the sanding, we'll go on to buffing, which will kind of blend everything in. And one thing we're going to keep conscious of too is the overall plane of the back of the neck here. We don't want a divot at the spot where this was, nor do we want a little hump. So we're going to start to really keep that in mind on these final passes here. So off comes the tape. It's high here, okay? So I'm inclined to remask and cut it down a little bit more. A lot of high spots still. So let's, repeat the process until we're comfortable with the overall shape of the filler. The good part, one of the good parts, is that we have lots of room to work still. Okay, so obviously the tape is going to create a little bit of a ridge, high spot, but it should go down enough that we can deal with that height through the tape as the tape is wearing. So let's go back to our 1,000 grit, get some more water on here, lubrication, and more even and better cut. Now, if after this pass it's still too high, then maybe I'll go back to the file. I don't know, we'll find out. I'm feeling a little more bold, as you see, and a little more confident that I'm not going to go through the clear coat because I still have a lot of patch. So this will start to take the more specific shape of the ding. So all of these edges here will start to disappear as we move through it. And it may be still high enough that I'll want to do a little filing on it. So this is pretty tough stuff. Problems that you can run into is that you work on this so hard that these edges get compromised, these edges leading up to the filler, and then they start to get a divot. So you get a thing where it goes like this, and then down, and then up on the high spot, and then back down again, and we don't want that. That's why we use the masking tape. Keep all the surrounding area as it was initially. Typically, I find that this filler is much harder than the lacquer that's used to finish the neck, as many coats as they may build up, it only has a certain amount of density, and this super glue is a lot stronger. So let's do just a little more filing. Again, we're going to go in the contour of the neck, and we'll change our direction of our scratches. So I'm doing my best not to touch the surrounding areas and just stay on top of the filler. Near the end, a lot of the excess surrounding the actual ding in the neck is just going to flake away. It'll kind of pop off as we go along. Not a big deal. Okay, let's get a fresh piece of 1000 grit. Squirt. All these white spots up here are going to go away because those are just hanging over the edge of the ding. So that'll all kind of blend in as we go. That's looking much, much better now. Still got a little high spot on the bottom here. Kind of happy with that. So if at any time you inadvertently do burn through the lacquer or the clear coat because you're overly excited about your process, you'll have to touch it up with some clear lacquer. Whether it's a polyurethane or a nitrocellulose will dictate your results, but theoretically we're not going to have to talk about any of that on this job. But it does happen, and it can happen, and it happens in every shop across the world. We don't want it to, and we do everything we can to avoid it. So that's pretty much why I mask off the area so that all these surrounding edges don't really get involved in all of this. So now I'm going to clean this tape up, and water may or may not break it down. We'll see. Still feel ridges and high spots, but we're going to work on that some more. And I think I'm going to do one more mask and hit it pretty hard again, just to bring it down. And I'm going to pull away from the edges and start to actually blend it in to the neck itself. So we're low enough now that we can pretty much afford to bring it out into the edges. Okay, so you can see that it's becoming quite round now. And again, this is 1000 grit. I wouldn't go any heavier, like the 800 or 600 or anything, because you'll be working for a long time trying to get those scratches out of there, and you'll probably compromise the surrounding area by trying to get the scratches out. In other words, you'll burn through a bunch of stuff. I think that's as far as I want to go as far as shaping. And let's get this tape off of here. Let's get a little bit of alcohol in there. Just a drop. That just breaks the glue down from the tape. Not all surfaces like alcohol, though. You'll find that most guitars don't mind. Most lacquered surfaces don't mind, but keep them away from those violins. The varnish surfaces will begin to break down almost immediately with alcohol. Just a word to the wise. Lacquered finish, alcohol's fine. Varnish finish, no, no, no. Find some 1200. We still have some clean here. So now I'm going to get a little bit more radical here. Feather it in. And I like to work one area, and then the middle, and then the outer area. So I make sure that I give each area sufficient love. Feeling, much as I am sanding, where the edges are coming away. And look at what we've got going on here. You can almost see our ding has disappeared. But once I dry this, then it's going to go filmy because we're sanding, we're not buffing. Let's take this away. You'll see a difference immediately in the texture. Quite dull, and this is quite bright. From here on out, we just graduate sandpaper grits until we get it to match up pretty good, and then we'll go with some buffing compounds. So I'm going to get some fresh paper here. From here on, it's pretty gentle. Here's a piece of 1200, which comes right after the 1000 grit. 1200, then 15, then 2000, 2500, 3000, and then finally 5000. We can go to 7000, we can go to 10,000, but I don't think it's necessary. It doesn't seem to make much difference. So now we're just gently trying to shape the gloss. We're trying to get nice, clean, straight lines, and I'm also feeling a tiny bit of, I literally can't tell where my patch was at this point. So at this point I sand, and then I dry, buff with the paper, blending everything. And I see a little high spot right there. We're going to get that out of there. Here we go. 12, let's do some 15. At this point, we're going to start shaping this whole half of the neck here so that we get a real solid blend. Okay, wipe it, dry it, 2000. I'm gonna go gentle too because, we're still kind of working the lacquer. I've seen clear coats burn through while buffing with fine buffing compound. So there's a certain point where there's no more clear. And that's why we want to try to isolate our work. Finer I get, I see, a little bit of a what looks like a scratch here. Now I'm at 2500 grit. Try to blend just that corner there. There we go. Every repair is a little bit different. We don't always know. We're going to end up with perfect or second to perfect, or if we're going to have to redo some things. So the trick is to get it all in one shot. And each grit that I use, I'm passing a little further. As you can see, I'm going right up into the headstock now because this is all going to become one. And then the final pass, 5,000. At this point, I could almost buff it out, so that the repair pretty much doesn't look like it was ever done. I'm happy with that, but I'm not done buffing, of course. It's still pretty dull, getting better. I like to use Stewart MacDonald swirl remover, which I call number 2 in a series of compounds that I use for this type of thing. I think we're going to go from 2 to 7, and 7 is just a final polish. But number 2 is really good for pretty much bringing it from this to this. So let's see what we get. And now at this point too, I sometimes will buff 3 to 4, maybe even 5 times. You got to buff. So here we go. Buff. It's starting to look like something. Now I still have an outline of the repair. When I pass my finger over it, I feel absolutely nothing, as though it were never there. I'm going to let that go because the more I fool around with it, the more it's going to change shape and texture. I think we're in good shape. Now there is one little corner here that's bothering me, and I want to see if I can actually... yeah, much better. Okay, so that's the first pass of buffing compound, and it looks pretty good. We're going to do it again. Make a little pad, and there we go. So it's starting to look like something now, huh? Use a little number 7, and I did shake these up. You saw that, right? Right, okay. Yeah. This is Meguiar's buffing compound, which is, car polish, and it works really well on guitar surfaces. So yeah, go for it, man. There's a lot of them, a lot of different levels of, gloss buffing and whatnot. At the end of the day here, we've got a nice glossy surface again. Finish off with some standard guitar polish. And if I didn't know it was there, I wouldn't know it was there. That's a pretty successful repair. It's not 1,000%. I would call this one about a 95% success. We're in pretty good shape here. Bring the camera a little closer so you can see what we've got. And I think that looks pretty darn good, huh? There it is right there. Now, if I want, I can just attend to that one little spot, and I may do that yet, and kind of repeat the whole process. So that would be a second level or second phase of this repair. And I'll give it some thought, and I'll probably do it. Anyway, that's an introduction to filling dings and refinishing and getting it back out to where it should be. And I wish you good luck with your own repairs. I think that anyone can do this if they have the right materials and some patience. So good luck. Bye.